Chapter 1. The Young Girl as Phenomenon. The young girl is old insofar as she is known to be young. There is therefore no question for her of benefiting from this reprieve, which is to say of committing the few reasonable excesses, of experiencing the few adventures expected of people her age, and all this with an eye to the moment when she will have to settle down into the ultimate void of adulthood. Thus, during the time it takes for youth to decay, social law contains its own violations, which are in the end just exemptions. The young girl is obsessed with authenticity, because it's a lie. The masculine young girl is paradoxical in that she's the product of a sort of alienation by contagion. Although the feminine young girl appears as the incarnation of a certain alienated masculine imaginary, there is nothing imaginary about the alienation of this incarnation. It is altogether concretely that she has eluded those whose fantasies she populates in order to face and dominate them. As the young girl emancipates herself, blossoms and multiplies, the dream turns into an all-consuming nightmare. It's at this point that her former slave returns to tyrannize yesterday's master. In the end, we witness an ironic epilogue in which the male sex becomes both the victim and the object of its own alienated desire.
I want people to be beautiful.
The young girl is the figure of the total and sovereign consumer. She carries herself as such in every domain of existence. The young girl knows so very well the value of things. Often before her decay becomes too obvious, the young girl gets married. The young girl is only good for consuming, pleasure, or work. It doesn't matter. The intimacy of the young girl, now equivalent to all intimacy, has become something anonymous and exterior, an object. The young girl never creates anything. All in all, she only recreates herself. By investing young people and women with an absurd symbolic surplus value, by making them the exclusive carriers of the new two kinds of esoteric knowledge proper to the new social order, consumption and seduction, spectacle has effectively emancipated the slaves of the past, but it has emancipated them as slaves. The most extreme banality of the young girl is to take her or himself for an original. The stunted quality of the young girl's language, although it implies an incontestable narrowing of the field of experience, in no way constitutes a practical handicap, because it was not made to talk with, but rather to please and to repeat. Chatter, curiosity, equivocation, hearsay. The young girl incarnates the fullness of improper existence, whose categories Heidegger identified. The young girl is a lie whose apogee is the face. When spectacles proclaim that woman is the future of man, it is naturally speaking of the young girl, and the future it predicts recalls only the worst, cybernetic slavery.
No kidding.
The young girl manages to live with a dozen unarticulated concepts as her own philosophy, that immediately become moral categories, meaning that the whole of her vocabulary can be definitively reduced to the good and evil binary. It goes without saying that in order to consider the world, it must be sufficiently simplified, and in order to permit her to live in it happily, the world must make many martyrs, starting with herself. Highly visible physical imperfections, even if they have no effect on aptitude for work, weaken people socially, transforming them into the involuntary invalids of work. Dr. Julius Moses, Afa Bunzaitan, February 1929. At the young girl, what is sweetest is also the cruelest. What is most natural is most feigned. What is most human is most machine-like. Adolescence is a recent category created according to the demands of mass consumption. The young girl invariably calls happiness everything to which they claim her. Or chain her, I apologize. The young girl is never simply sad. She is also sad that she's sad. Ultimately, the young girl's ideal is domestic. Bloom is the crisis of classic sexuation, and the young girl is the offensive by which market domination has responded to this crisis. There is no more chastity in the young girl than there is debauchery. The young girl simply lives as a stranger to her desires, whose coherence is governed by her market-driven superego. The ennui of abstraction flows into this come. There is nothing, neither poetry nor ethnology, neither Marxism nor metaphysics, that the young girl cannot fit into the closed horizon of her vapid quotidian. Albertine comes from nowhere, and is very modern in that way. She flutters, comes and goes. From her absence of attachments, she derives the instability and the unpredictable quality which gives her power of freedom. Jacques Dubois, for Albertine, Proust in the sense of the social. When it addresses itself distinctly to the young girl, the spectacle is not above a bit of bathmology. This is why the entire significance of boy bands and girl bands comes from making a show of the very fact of making a show. The lie consists here, by means of crude irony, in presenting as a lie what is on the contrary the truth of the young girl. The young girl is struck by the sudden vertigo whenever the world stops revolving around her. The young girl sees herself as the holder of a sacred power, the power of commodities.
I love children. They're beautiful, honest, and they smell good.
The mother and the whore, as Weininger understands them, are equally present in the young girl, but one hardly renders her any more worthy of praise than the other makes her worthy of blame. In fact, over time, a curious reversibility between the two can be observed. The young girl is fascinating in the manner of all things that exhibit a closing in on themselves, a mechanical self-sufficiency, or an indifference to the observer, like the insect, the infant, the automaton, or Foucault's pendulum. Keep messing up here. Why must the young girl always feign some activity or other, to remain unassailable in her passivity? The freedom of the young girl rarely goes beyond the ostentatious cult, the most pathetic of the spectacle's productions. Essentially, it consists in opposing a lack of zeal with the necessities of alienation. The future of the young girl. The name of a group of communist girls organized in the southern suburbs of Paris in 1936 for the entertainment, education, and the defense of their interests. The young girl wants to be desired without love or loved without desire. There is no threat, in either case, to her unhappiness. The young girl has love stories. It is enough to recall what she classifies as adventure to get a good idea of just how much the young girl fears the possible. The old age of the young girl is no less hideous than her youth. From one end to the other, her life is nothing but a progressive shipwreck in formlessness, never an eruption of becoming. The young girl wallows in the limbo of time. As for the face of the young girl, differences in age, like difference in gender, are insignificant. There is no age to be struck by youthitude, nor is there a gender that forbids itself a dash of femininitude. Just like the magazines they intend for her, and which she devours so painfully, the life of the young girl is divided and organized into so many columns, between which the greatest separation reigns. The young girl is that which, being only this, scrupulously obeys the authoritarian distribution of roles. Love for the young girl is just autism for two. That's a good one. What they continue to call virility is nothing more than the infantilism of men and femininity, infantilism of women. Moreover, perhaps one ought to speak of virilism and of feminism when so much voluntarism is mixed into the acquisition of an identity. The same disabused stubbornness that characterized the traditional woman assigned to the home with the duty of ensuring survival blossoms at present in the young girl, now emancipated from the domestic sphere and from all sexual monopoly. She will from now on express herself everywhere, and her irreproachable effective impermeability at work and the extreme rationalization she imposes on her emotional life, in her every step so spontaneously military, in the way she fucks, carries herself, or taps away on her computer, which is no different from the way she washes her car. One piece of information that I obtained in a well-known Berlin department store is particularly instructive. When taking on sales and office staff, says an influential gentleman from the personnel department, we attach most importance to a pleasant appearance. From a distance he looks a bit like Reinhold Schnitzel in early films. I ask him what he understands by pleasant, saucy, or pretty. Not exactly pretty. What's far more crucial is, morally pink complexion. I do know. A morally pink complexion. This combination of concepts at a stroke renders transparent the everyday life that is fleshed out by window displays, salary earners, and illustrated papers. Its morality must have a pink hue, its pink a moral grounding. That is what the people responsible for selection want. They would like to cover life with a varnish concealing its far from rosy reality. But beware, if morality should penetrate beneath the skin, and the pink be not quite moral enough to prevent the eruption of desires, the gloom of unadorned morality would bring as much danger to the prevailing order as a pink that began to flare up immorally. So that both may be neutralized, they are tied to one another. The same system that requires the aptitude test also produces this nice, friendly mixture, and the more rationalization progresses, the more the morally pink appearance gains ground. It is scarcely too hazardous to assert that in Berlin, a salary type is developing, standardized in the direction of the desired complexion. Speech, clothes, gestures, and countenances become assimilated, and the result of the process is that very same pleasant experience, or appearance, with which the help of photographs can be widely reproduced. A selective breeding that is carried out under the pressure of social relations, and that is necessarily supported by the economy through the arousal of corresponding consumer needs. Employees must join in, whether they want to or not. The rush to the numerous beauty salons springs partly from existential concerns, and the use of cosmetic products is not always a luxury. For fear of being withdrawn from use as obsolete, ladies and gentlemen dye their hair, while 40-year-olds take up sports to keep slim. How Can I Become Beautiful runs the title of a booklet recently launched onto the market. The newspaper advertisements for it say that it shows ways to look young and beautiful both now and forever. Fashion and economy work hand in hand. Most people, of course, are in no position to consult a specialist. They fall prey to quacks or have to make do with remedies as cheap as they are dubious. For some time now, the above-mentioned deputy, Dr. Moses, has been fighting in their interest in Parliament for incorporating proper provision for disfigurement into social security. The young working community of cosmetic practitioners of Germany has associated itself with this legitimate demand. Siegfried Kracauer, The Salaried Masses, Duty and Distraction in Weimar, Germany, 1930. The loss of metaphysical direction is not distinct in the young girl from the loss of the sensory, Arnold Galen, in which the extreme modernity of her alienation is verified. The young girl moves in the oblivion of being, no less than in that of the event. The incompressible agitation of the young girl, in the image of the society at its every point, is governed by the hidden demand to render effective a false and pathetic metaphysics, whose most immediate substance is the negation of the passage of time and the obscuring of human finitude. The young girl resembles her photo. Insofar as her appearance entirely exhausts her essence, as a representation does her reality, the young girl is that which is entirely expressible, perfectly predictable, and absolutely neutralized. The young girl exists only in proportion to the desire that they have for her, and knows herself only by what they say she is. The young girl appears as the product and the principal outcome of the formidable surplus crisis of capitalist modernity. She is the proof and the support of the limitless pursuit of the process of valorization, when the process of accumulation proves limited by the limits of the planet itself, ecological catastrophe, or social implosion. The young girl is content to cover over with a falsely provocative hidden sense the actual economic sense of her motivations. All the freedom of movement the young girl enjoys in no way prevents her from being a prisoner, from manifesting in every circumstance the automatisms of the shut-in. The way to be the young girl is to be nothing. Managing to succeed in her sentimental and professional life at the same time, certain young girls proclaim this as an ambition worthy of respect. The love of the young girl is just a word in the dictionary. The young girl requires not only that you protect her, she also wants the power to educate you. The eternal return of the same styles and fashion is enough to convince. The young girl does not play with appearances. It is appearances that play with her. Even more than the feminine young girl, the masculine young girl, with his fake muscles, absurdity, which is to say, suffering, and what Foucault called the discipline of bodies. Discipline increases the forces of the body in economic terms of utility, and diminishes these same forces in political terms of obedience. In short, it disassociates power from the body. On the one hand, it turns it into an aptitude, a capacity which it seeks to increase. On the other hand, it reverses the course of the energy, the power that might result from it, and turns it into a relation of strict subjection. Michel Foucault, Discipline and Punish. Oh, a girl, that receptacle of shame under beauty's lock and key. Witold Gombrowicz, Verdiduc, 1937. There is surely no place where one feels as horribly alone as in the arms of a young girl. When the young girl gives in to her own insignificance, she still manages to find glory in it because she is having fun. This was precisely what captivated me, the maturity and autonomy of her youth, the self-assurance of her style. While we in school had our blackheads, constantly broken of pimples and ideals, while our movements were gawky and each step was a gaffe, her exterior was entrancingly polished. Youth for her was not a transitional age. For this modern one, youth was the only time befitting a human being. Her youth had no need of ideals. It was in and of itself an ideal. Witold Gombrowicz, Verdiduc. The young girl never learns anything. That's not why she's here. The young girl knows all too well what she wants in detail to want anything in general.
Don't touch my bag!
I like these little things Taekwondo throws in here. Very creative. The triumph of the young girl originates in the failure of feminism. The young girl does not speak. On the contrary, she is spoken by the spectacle. The young girl wears the mask of her face. The young girl reduces all grandeur to the level of her ass. Damn, Taekwondo. The young girl is a purifier of negativity, an industrial profiler of unilaterality. In all things, she separates the negative from the positive, and generally retains only one of the two. No surprise that she doesn't believe in words, which in fact have no meaning in her mouth. Let it suffice for us to be convinced to see what she means by romantic, which after all has little to do with Holderlin. We must hence envisage the birth of the young girl as the construction of an object in which different disciplines compete, from medicine to psychology, from physical education to morality, from physiology to hygiene. Jean-Claude Caron, The Body of the Young Girls. The young girl would like for a simple word, love, not to imply the project of destroying this society.
Ah, the heart! Don't confuse your job with your feelings.
In the life of the young girl, inactivated opposites thrust into nothingness, complement each other, and never contradict. The young girl's sentimentalism and materialism, however opposed they may appear, are really in solidarity, two aspects of her central void. The young girl is happy to speak of her childhood with emotion, in order to give the impression that she has not gone over it, that at the bottom she is still naive. Like a horse, she dreams of candor, But unlike whores, she insists that we believe her, and that we believe her sincerely. Her infantilism, which is ultimately just a childlike fundamentalism, makes her the wiliest vector of general infantilization. The pettiest sentiments still retain, for the young girl, the prestige of their sincerity. The young girl loves her illusions the same way she loves her reification, by proclaiming them. The young girl knows everything is devoid of consequences, even her own suffering. Everything is funny, nothing's a big deal. Everything is cool, nothing is serious. The young girl wants to be recognized not for what she might be, but for the simple fact of her being. She wants to be recognized in the absolute. The young girl is not here to be criticized. When the young girl arrives at the age limit of infantilism, where it becomes impossible not to ask oneself the questions of ends for fear of finding oneself suddenly in search of means, which in the society can arrive very late, she reproduces. Paternity and maternity constitute one method among others, no less devoid of substance than all the rest, of holding out under the empire of necessity. The young girl doesn't kiss you, she drools over you through her teeth. Materialism of secretions. The young girl adopts above all the point of view of psychology, about herself as much as the course of the world. This is how she manages to present a certain consciousness of her own reification, a consciousness that is itself reified, as it's cut off from all gesture. The young girl knows the standard perversions.
Too cute.
The young girl's aim is balance, not the balance of a ballerina, but of an accountant. The smile has never served as an argument. There is also the smile of skulls. The young girl's affectivity is made only of signs, and occasionally mere signals. Wherever ethos is lacking or decomposing, the young girl appears as the bearer of the fleeting and discolored mores of the spectacle. The young girl is not expected to understand you. The young girl's predilection for actors and actresses can be explained according to the laws of elementary magnetism. Whereas they are the positive absence of any quality, the void that takes out forms, she is but the negative absence of quality. Thus, like his reflection, the actor is the same as the young girl, whose negation he also is. The young girl conceived love as one specific kind of activity. The young girl's laughter rings with the desolation of nightclubs. The young girl is the only insect that consents to the etymology of women's magazines. Identical in this to misery, a young girl never shows up alone. Thus, wherever young girls dominate, their tastes must also dominate. This is what determines the tastes of our time. The young girl is the purest form of reified relations. She is their truth. The young girl is the anthropological concentrate of reification. The spectacle amply remunerates, can't say that, never heard that word before, though indirectly the conformity of the young girl. In love more than anywhere else, the young girl behaves like an accountant, always suspecting that she loves more than she is loved, and that she gives more than she receives. Among young girls there is a community of gesture and expression that is anything but moving. The young girl is ontologically virgin of all experience. The young girl can display solicitude, provided one is truly miserable. This is one aspect of her resentment. The young girl does not perceive the passage of time any more than she is moved by its consequences. Otherwise, how else could she speak of aging with such indignation, as though it were a crime committed against her? Even when she isn't trying to seduce, the young girl acts like a seductress. There's something professional about everything the young girl does. The young girl will never stop flattering herself for having common sense. In the young girl, even the most insipid moralisms have the air of prostitution. The young girl possesses all the severity of the economy. However, the young girl is more ignorant of abandon than anything else. The young girl is the entire reality of the spectacle's abstract codes. The young girl occupies the central node of the present system of desire. The young girl's every experience is drawn back incessantly into the pre-existing representation she's made for herself. All the overwhelming concreteness, the living part of the passage of time and of things are known to her only as imperfections, as alterations of an abstract model. The young girl is resentment. That smiles. There are beings that give you the desire to die slowly before their eyes, but the young girl only excites the desire to vanquish her, to take advantage of her. The young girl does not couple and transport toward the other, but in order to escape her unbearable nullity. The supposed liberation of woman did not consist in their emancipation from the domestic sphere, but rather in the total extension of the domestic sphere into all of society. In the face of any person who would seek to make her think, the young girl will always pride herself on being a realist. Insofar as what she hides is not her secret, but rather her shame, the young girl hates the unexpected, especially when it is not programmed.
Being love, a drug that reduces stress.
The young girl never stops repeating it. She wants to be loved for who she is, which is to say for the non-being she is. The young girl is the living and continual introjection of all repression. The self of the young girl is as thick as a magazine. Nothing in the conduct of the young girl has a reason in itself. Everything is ordered by the dominant definition of happiness. The young girl's estrangement from herself borders on mythomania. As a last resort, the young girl fetishizes love so as to avoid an awareness of the entirely conditioned nature of her desires.
I'm so happy I could give a shit about being free.
The chemistry of passion.
Today, everything is explainable, even the fact of falling in love. Farewell romanticism, since the phenomenon is just a series of chemical reactions.
In their divorce, the young girl's heart and ass become two empty abstractions. The ghostly image of the cinema hero models the embraces of adolescence, the later adultery. Max Horkheimer, Theodore W. Adorno, The Dialectic of Enlightenment. The young girl is steeped in déjà vu. For her, the first time experience is always a second time in representation. Naturally, nowhere has there been a sexual liberation, that oxymoron, but only the pulverization of everything that slowed the total mobilization of desire in view of the production of merchandise. The tyranny of pleasure does not incriminate pleasure, but tyranny. The young girl knows how to take feelings into account. In the world of young girls, coitus appears as a logical sanction of all experience. The young girl is satisfied with life, at least that's what she says. The young girl only establishes relationships based on the strictest reification and on false substantiality, where they can be sure that's what unites, that what unites in fact only separates. The young girl is optimistic, thrilled, positive, happy, enthusiastic, joyful. In other words, she suffers. The young girl is produced wherever nihilism begins to speak of happiness. There is nothing special about the young girl, that is, her beauty. The young girl is an optical illusion. From afar, she's an angel, and up close, she's a beast. The young girl doesn't age. She decomposes. We know in general what the young girls think of worrying. The young girl's education is the inverse of all other forms of education. First, the immediate innate perfection of youth, and the effort to maintain herself at the height of this primary nullity, and finally, collapse in the face of the impossibility of returning to the side of time. Viewed from afar, the young girl's nothingness appears relatively habitable, at certain moments even comfortable.
Love, work, health.
The young girl's beauty is never a particular beauty, or one that might belong to her. On the contrary, hers is a beauty without content, an absolute beauty free of any personality. The young girl's beauty is but the form of a void, the spectral form of the young girl. This is why she can, without choking on her words, speak of beauty, because her own is never the expression of a substantial singularity, but a pure and ghostly objectivity. Indeed, only now does the basic ideological confusion between woman and sexuality assume its full scope, since woman, once subjugated as a sex, are today liberated as a sex. Women, young people, and the body, the emergence of all of which, after thousands of years of servitude, forgetting in effect, constitutes the most revolutionary potentiality, and therefore the most fundamental risk for any social or whatever, are integrated and recuperated as a myth of emancipation. Women are given woman to consume. The young are given the young, and in this formal narcissistic emancipation, their real liberation is successfully averted. Jean Trissotin Baudrillard, that's hard to say, The Consumer Society, Myths and Structures. The young girl offers an unequivocal model of the metropolitan ethos, a refrigerated consciousness living in exile in a plasticized body.
Too cool.
Instead of saying very, the young girl says too, while in fact, she is so very little.